So I was inspired to have this conversation, obviously, because of all of the things that are going on in the world. And not just because of the things that are going on in the world, it's more so because of the responses that I'm seeing from people in relation to or in reaction to the things that are going on to the world, all types of global events, whether it's Trump, whether it's things that are happening in the Middle East, whether it's economics, just all of that. And you guys know that I always come from a spiritual and energetic lens when I'm talking about these things. And the reason why I titled this, If You Hate What's Going On in the World, Look in the Mirror, it's because everything that's happening in the world is a reflection of who we are. It's a reflection of who we are inside. It's a reflection of our consciousness, and we are the ones that are creating these global events. So I'm going to share something that I posted on Threads a couple of days ago that people were really loving. I also shared this in my story, and it says, the reason why so many people are having a hard time with all of the madness going on in the world is because they refuse to recognize that these events are mirroring their own shadows. This is a collective dark night of the soul. We are, on an individual level, meant to face and integrate the parts of ourselves that are corrupt, dishonest, genocidal, and hateful. This is what will correct the distortion in the world. What you accuse others is what you fail to heal within yourself. So, I've talked about this a few times on my platforms, and this is a big, this is very directly related to what it is that I teach in my work, which is radical responsibility and the understanding, the inner standing that we as human beings, as conscious creators, as conscious creatrixes, we are the ones that are responsible for everything that's happening in the world. I've talked a lot about government and why government even exists, what government actually means, and the fact that government is here, it exists because we as a collective decided at some point in our history that we as conscious beings did not want to govern ourselves. And so all of that energy that needs to be utilized for our self-governance has just been dispersed and needs to be corralled or maintained and directed towards the creation of something. And that is what government was created to do. It was created to sort of corral all of that energy that we decided through distortion, through the emergence of scarcity mentality, through the creation of patriarchy, through the inversion of our natural order. Government sort of sprang up, and it's basically this idea of like, oh, so you don't want to choose what to do with your consciousness? Great, we'll decide what to do with your consciousness. And so government means, like, when you break down the etymology of government, govern means to control, and ment refers to the mental or the mind. And so when you put those things together, what you're really talking about is mind control. And some of the people that are in this space know this, or at least know this on some level, or feel it, or it resonates in their body. But some of you may not know this, or some of the people that might watch this after this live stream is finished, you might watch this and hear this concept for the very first time. And so you've been waiting for my return to YouTube. Thank you. I appreciate it. And please don't be afraid to drop your questions or your comments in the chat. I'm happy to hear from you and hear what it is that you have to say. But when I say, if you don't like what's going on in the world, look at yourself, look in the mirror, it's because everything that is outside of us is a direct reflection of what is happening internally. So if you don't like violence, or if you think that genocide is a problem, or you think that tyranny and control is a problem, then the very first thing that you're meant to do, which is the opposite of what most people do, is they look for someone to blame, whether it's a politician, a president, whether it is someone that they feel is an enemy because they don't vote, or they don't vote in the way that they want them to, or they have a very different political ideology or political leaning. People look outside of themselves for someone to blame for what it is that they are witnessing through their eyes. When what you're meant to do, and what we're designed to do, and what the whole purpose of this plane of existence that we live in, which is really it's a school, it's a life school for us to develop our souls, to develop our purpose, to develop our healing. We are meant to look at ourselves and say, well, everything outside of me is a reflection of what's inside of me. So if I don't like what's happening outside of me, where am I creating that within myself? Where am I violent to myself? Where am I repressive or oppressive to myself or to others? Where am I genocidal? Where do I condone murder? Where do I condone the harm to other beings? And for some people, that harm is internalized, it's self-inflicted. Whereas for other people, it's produced in terms of aggressiveness or externalized violence. But this idea that all of these entities, or these systems, as people love to say, well, it's the system, it's the structures. We are the system, we are the structure. And the thing is that the people that, I guess, are kind of controlling the puppet strings of these systems and structures, they're really controlling the puppet strings of the people. Because again, the people are the creators. We are conscious beings, and everything that exists in our physical reality is a manifestation of our own collective consciousness. It starts on an individual or micro level, and then it expands out to a collective or macro level. Are y'all with me? Do you understand what it is that I'm saying so far? Just like drop some notes in the chat, like put a one in the chat if you hear what it is that I'm saying and if you understand what it is that I'm saying. If you're picking up what I'm putting down, let me know. Okay. So, with us being the creators of all of the things that we dislike, if we want to change these systems, if we want to change these circumstances, we have to start with ourselves. And sometimes people get really frustrated by, when people such as myself say these things because you want to go out and you want to, protest in the streets, or you want to fight, or you want to argue, or you want to get on your keyboards and just tell everybody why they're wrong. And what you're doing is, not only are you depleting yourself of your life force energy, you're actually contributing to the maintenance and the growth and the strengthening of the very systems that you say that you want to dismantle. Because all of these systems of violence and control and oppression and death and inversion are reinforced by, those behaviors that I'm describing, these behaviors of, well, I'm going to yell at you and tell you that you didn't vote the right way, or you're not doing the right thing, or you should be doing this with your body, or this is what you're supposed to believe, or this is what you're supposed to think, when really you're supposed to be focusing on yourself. So, one of the examples that I like to use, which can be really triggering for a lot of people and it can be really controversial, is, I talk, sometimes I talk about, I'm vegan, right? So I'm vegan. A lot of you guys know this. I don't eat animals. I stopped eating animals and I stopped wearing animals and participating in any animal exploitation almost 5 years ago. And one of the reasons why I started practicing veganism is because I began to really understand that connection. Well, if I don't support mass death, if I don't support genocide, if I am emotionally distraught by the concept of slavery, if I am emotionally distraught by, and not the concept of slavery, it's not just a concept, it's a reality. If I'm emotionally distraught by the reality of rape and forced, impregnation and forced birthing and forced breeding, which, speaking specifically for the African American or Black American or Aboriginal Indigenous community, this is something that is a very, very painful and traumatic wound for many of us. And it's something that we're kind of like, it's beaten into our heads from the moment that we're children, that we come from a lineage of slavery, we come from a lineage of oppression, we come from a lineage of rape and sexual abuse and all manner of things that took place during slavery. And so if you are learning about these historical experiences and also things that are still happening because there are still people being enslaved around the world. And then you step back and you ask yourself, well, how am I participating in this? Well, I use veganism as an example because the very ideology or ideological framework that has certain beings looking at black and brown people as inferior and subservient and dehumanizes us to the point where they feel that they can enslave us and control us, forcibly breed us through rape and molestation. That's what we do to animals. We do that very same thing to animals. So when you're looking at the world and you're saying, "Well, I don't like this. Like what is happening here doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel loving. It's not rooted in anything humane. It's not rooted in anything that's of a higher consciousness or a higher vibration." But because I know that as a human being and as a conscious creator, I'm connected to the collective consciousness. I am a part of the collective consciousness, and the way that I think, the way that I feel, what I believe, and what I do all plays a part in the creation of this physical world. What can I do to remove myself from the creation of these systems and structures that are so heartbreaking for me to witness? Do you guys hear what I'm saying? And so for me, what I realized was, well, if let's just use, white people or white enslavers for an example. White enslavers or the elites or the reptilians or the archons or depending on whatever your belief system is, the devil, demons, whatever it is that you want to associate with these really negative and inverted energies, these beings, these entities look at someone like me and they feel that I am property. They feel that I am a resource for them to mine for their own use, for their own pleasure, for their own sustenance, for their own labor, whatever the case is. And then as a human being, I look at the animal kingdom and I say the same exact thing. Well, you are inferior because you can't form coherent thought in the way that I can. You are inferior because you are dependent on me to be fed. You are inferior because I've been taught that you don't have a soul, or I've been taught that you were put on this earth by God in order for me to use and exploit in whatever way that I want. The parallel is that the very thing that we think is acceptable to do to others, whether it's man, woman, child, or animal, or insect, or plant, or any living being on this planet, what you're doing is you're creating a circular effect where the energy that you put out into the world or the energy that you put out onto others has to come back to you. It has to be returned to you through karmic retribution, or in universal law, it's a law of correspondence. It is as within, so without, as above, so below. What I think of others is a reflection of myself. And so if you feel that these beings exist for your pleasure and your sustenance and your control, there are going to be other beings that are going to direct that same energy onto you. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Put a one in the chat if you understand what it is that I'm saying, if you're picking up what I'm putting down. And it's hard to hear this. It's hard for a lot of people to hear this because it forces us to look at ourselves. It forces us to, instead of blaming outside of ourselves for the things that are going on in the world, we have to look at ourselves and say, well, wait a second, how am I contributing to that? How am I contributing to that? And so for me, the first time when I decided I wasn't going to eat animals anymore, and it was something that I had been thinking for a really long time, I decided that I was going to watch a documentary. I watched a documentary called Earthlings because I knew that I needed to see what I was participating in, because that's the other part of this, is that we don't want to see the role that we play in the suffering of other people. We want everybody to understand our suffering. We want everybody to empathize with our suffering and our story and our history and our lineage and our trauma, but we don't want to see what we're contributing to. We don't want to see the suffering that we turn a blind eye to. And so for me, I sat down and I watched this 120-minute documentary. I don't even think it was 120 minutes. I think it was like 90 minutes. It was relatively short. This 90-minute documentary, and I forced myself to witness everything that I myself had participated in. And I come from a background where I used to cry about slavery and I used to feel like a victim. I used to feel like, well, this person is treating me this way because I'm black, or this person is treating me this way because I'm a woman, or this person is treating me this way because I'm, not able bodied, or whatever it is your story is, whatever your victim hook is, you can attribute that to what it is that I'm saying. But when I sat down and I watched this and I said, oh my God, this is what I'm a part of. And this is evil. This is demonic. This is just unconscionable. The level of suffering that I participate in without any care or thought, because I thought that these beings were inferior to me. They were supposed to be subservient to me, that they were meant to be consumed by me. That very same ideology that led to me and millions, billions of other people treating the billions, and it's honestly trillions of animals when you include fish, that are murdered every single year. That very same consciousness and that same apathy that we have towards these living creatures is the very apathy and evil that gets turned onto humans, but we don't see the role that we play in that because it doesn't feel like it's connected. But when you understand that every living thing is the embodiment of each other, it's all connected and we all have a responsibility in what it is that's happening around the world. So when people talk about genocide, when people talk about what's happening over in the Middle East, when people are talking about what's happening in, the Democratic Republic of Congo, when people are talking about what's happening to, the Muslims in China, we all participate in that in some way. So it's easy to point the finger and say they're evil or they're wrong, but it's much, much, much harder to look in the mirror and say, wait a second, where am I doing the same thing? So, where am I participating in genocide? Because when you know that trillions of animals are murdered every year, what else could that be than genocide? So, if you're crying about the genocide that's happening to humans, ask yourself, and I'm not saying, let me just be clear, I'm not saying that we don't shine a light on the things that humans do to each other. I'm not saying that you're meant to be disconnected or you're meant to not talk about these things. But what I'm saying is that before you start pointing the finger at what other people are doing or not doing, you have to first look at yourself and ask yourself, how are you participating in that very thing that you're blaming others for? Because on some level, you've participated in it, whether in this lifetime or a previous lifetime. Otherwise, you wouldn't even be able to see it. You wouldn't be able to notice it, and it wouldn't affect you on such a deep emotional level. Lanique says that she is working towards becoming a raw vegan and she feels better. I feel that. And I use veganism as an example because it is so controversial and a lot of people have a very visceral response to it because food is so personal. It's how you feed your body, it's how you nourish your body, or for most people, it's how you destroy your body, it's how you kill your body. And so when you think about the type of energy that you're consuming, what are you really eating? And when you're eating something that was forcibly bred, trapped in a cage, enslaved, tortured, and then brutally murdered while it screamed out in pain and agony and fought for its life. And you're now consuming that energy and you're wondering why you are full of anxiety. You're wondering why you're afraid to actually live your life and step into your purpose. You're wondering why you're afraid to step out of your comfort zone because you're consuming the energy that is very reflective of those same emotional and mental concepts. And a lot of people don't draw those parallels. And I can speak for myself that the reason why I felt better when I stopped consuming these things is because I was not literally taking in this dark, heavy death energy of a being that wanted to live a full life but didn't have the opportunity to because humans such as myself thought that their life wasn't as worthy as mine. So that's one example that I'm talking about. Excuse me. And I know that most people are not going to stop eating animals. I know that, at least not right now. As the consciousness begins to shift and evolve and rise, which I'm going to start talking about in a moment, that will change. We're not going to see, well, I can't say what we're not going to see because I'm not a psychic in that sense, but what I will say is that it's a slow process and it's going to take time for people to continue to wake up and take responsibility for the contribution to global suffering that they are participating in. Because a lot of people think that they're absolved from global suffering, they think they're absolved from global violence, they think that they're absolved from global enslavement and hatred and violence when we're all participants in it. We're all creators of it. The creation of a lot of this is unconscious, but this is kind of what leads me into what I'm about to start talking about next, which is the rising of consciousness. So what I said in that post that I read at the beginning of my live about how we're going through a collective dark night of the soul. Like, what is the dark night of the soul? Like, put a 2 in the chat if you have experienced a dark night of the soul. Oversimplified Productions. Yo, you're on YouTube now? Yes, I'm on YouTube. I'm new to YouTube. I put out a couple of videos last summer, but now I'm going to start going live more often and really showing up on this platform because it's time. It's definitely time. I've been resting and healing and really taking care of myself for the last couple of years, but Goddess has been telling me that it's time to step out of my comfort zone and to start showing up and sharing what it is that's on my heart to share and sharing the downloads that I'm receiving from spirit to share with people. So thank you. So you guys have experienced a dark night of the soul. So dark, for those of you who are not familiar with the dark night of the soul, dark night of the soul is essentially it's a it's a very powerful spiritual awakening that people go through where they basically die to their own identity. They have an ego death where they're forced to face aspects of themselves, or what some people call the shadow aspects of ourselves, the parts of ourselves that are distorted, the parts of ourselves that are inauthentic, the parts of ourselves that were programmed and installed into us by our parents or by society, or the traumas and wounds that we're operating from versus being centered and grounded in the present. It's past experiences from our lineage, like things that have been given to us through epigenetics from our mothers and grandmothers and great grandmothers and fathers and grandfathers and great grandfathers and so on. And so when you go through a dark night of the soul, it is an experience where you sort of awaken to the fact that you are living a lie, that you are not being who you were designed to be in this lifetime, that you were not following the pathway that you chose to follow, and that God gave you the opportunity to follow when you incarnated into this plane of existence. And so when you go through the dark night of the soul, you are seeing those really ugly parts of yourself that you've denied, the part of you, like what I was talking about in terms of veganism, the part of you that does in some way enjoy and relish and crave death, because when you're eating these red meats and these raw fish and all, you're eating death. And so there's a part of you that gets off on and craves that death energy. And so you're waking up to these dark parts of yourself that make you realize, oh my God, this is not in alignment, this is not integral, this is not who I was designed to be. You wake up to the part of yourself that is the people pleaser. You wake up to the part of yourself that lies because you're afraid that if you tell the truth, everybody that you love will leave you. You're waking up to the part of yourself that, you know, doesn't speak or advocate for yourself because you are afraid of being seen. You're waking up to the part of yourself who's not actually living in your purpose because you chose a path that might have more financial stability because you were raised in an environment of scarcity. So you might be making money, but you don't understand why your life is so miserable. And it's because you're not actually connected to your dharma. You're not actually living your life's purpose. And then when you come to the realization of it, the reason why it's called a dark night of the soul is because it's extremely painful. It's extremely painful. It's extremely confronting. There are parts of ourselves that resist it because it shatters your entire sense of identity. Everything and who you thought you were becomes illuminated as a lie, as an untruth, as a distortion. And that causes sort of like a shift in your psyche and in your spiritual presence, where you now have to learn who you are almost from scratch so that you can actually live a life that is aligned with who you are designed to be. Drop a 2 in the chat if that resonates with you, if that was your experience with the dark night of the soul, or if you resonate with that, or if you thought you hadn't had a dark night of the soul, but now that I've described it, you realize you have had a dark night of the soul. Yes. Yes. And so when I say that we're going through a collective dark night of soul. What I mean is that globally, collectively, as society is waking up to the shadow aspects of ourselves. And you have certain beings or certain entities that are designed to come into this planet to sort of shine a light on the darkness within people. But we're still in that stage of denial. We're still in that collective stage of resistance, that we're still in that collective stage of blame where people are starting to see the shadows and they're saying, well, it's because of Trump, or it's because of Biden, or it's because of, if you live in another country, replace Trump and Biden with whoever your, political leaders are, because it's all the same game no matter where you are in the country or wherever you are in the world, because all of these governments and all of these politicians and all of these 3-letter and 4-letter organizations, they're all in cahoots to keep your consciousness reduced. They're all working in cahoots to keep you disconnected from yourself, to keep you disempowered, to keep you in scarcity, and to keep you in blame, because then you're directing all of your energy at your fellow, your neighbors, your sisters, your brothers, rather than pulling back, realizing that you are basically a marionette on puppet strings and you have to cut those strings. But in order for you to cut those strings, you actually have to take full radical responsibility for yourself and your participation in the creation of the very systems that you don't want to see. So when people talk about, well, I want to see the system torn down and we should burn it to the ground, this is what that looks like. This is what that looks like. All of this global chaos, all of these revelations in Hollywood, all of these, politicians that are, driving people crazy from the things that they do, all of these events, all of these experiences and you know, um, uh, yeah, the events that we're witnessing are designed to first have us come back to ourselves, have us come back to ourselves, because it's through recognizing how you're participating in that that allows you to remove yourself from your participation in it, because like I was saying before, it's your participation that is what fuels the system, whether you think you're fighting against it or not. The way that you tear down the things that you don't want to see is by extracting your energy from it. It's from removing your energy from it. Think about it like a relationship with a narcissist. I know quite a few people on this. I mean, I feel like pretty much everybody feels like they've had an experience with someone that they would label a narcissist, right? But the thing is that we all have narcissistic tendencies. All of us. We all do. Because ultimately life's journey is about the self. It's we're meant to be self-involved to a certain extent. But to kind of touch on the example of, like the textbook narcissist, anyone that's had an experience with a narcissist knows that the more energy you give them, the more you try to get them to see you as a human, the more you try to get them to, treat you well, the more you try to get them to, stop being mean to you or saying horrible things to you or mistreating you. The more energy that you give them, and you just fuel their narcissism even more, you're giving them fuel to the fire. You are feeding their ego, you're feeding their, overinflated sense of self, and you are basically contributing to the creation of your own suffering, because you keep giving all of your energy to this person who is siphoning it like a snack. But what is the key towards, you know, no longer being trapped in a sense by the narcissist? What do? You pull your energy away. You stop engaging with them. You stop giving them your energy. You stop feeding them from your life force. And that is how you deflate the narcissist. You don't deflate the narcissist by fighting against them and protesting in the streets and begging them to see you as a human. You say, "Oh, I see what this is. I'm clocking you right now. Done. No more of this." And then you turn your energy away. And that is when the narcissist crumbles. That is when they lose their power because you're no longer feeding them. You're no longer a source for them to extract your life force from. How many of you understand what I'm talking about? How many of you have dealt with a narcissist and had to learn the hard way that the only way to defeat the narcissist is to completely disengage from the narcissist? Thank you, Christy. She says, I agree with you 100%. And for anybody that watches us outside of the live stream, I know because I know a lot of, and it's not to say that men don't have experiences with narcissistic women or other narcissistic men, but it is something that is really, you hear women talking about this the most. And one of the reasons why, you hear this a lot from women is because a lot of women fancy themselves empaths. They fancy themselves as like really loving, nurturing people, and what you do is when you're over giving and when you're in a place of where you're coming from a place of need, you're coming from a place of scarcity, you attract someone like a narcissist because they're like, "Oh, you're wide open. You're tender fresh little meat for me to just nibble on." And that's why so many, self-proclaimed empaths end up in relationships with narcissists. It's actually a very symbiotic relationship. You guys are both fueling each other. You're receiving something from that, which is why you're engaging with them, because even though you don't feel like you're getting what it is that you want from them, you are trying to fulfill a need through your people pleasing and through your over giving. And the narcissist is happy to take it from you. So both of you are helping each other. But it is when you decide to rise up and you recognize that all of the things that you're trying to get from the narcissist, or in the grand scheme of what I'm talking about today, from the system, from the structures, when you realize that these systems and these structures can't even exist without you, they have no fuel without you. You are the source of everything that you need, you are the source of everything that you desire, and you don't need anything from them. You pull your energy back, and then all of a sudden you feel alive again. You feel resourced, you feel happy, you feel satisfied. It doesn't mean that there's not going to be a process of healing and integration that you have to go through because of that experience, but that is, what is a necessary part of the process for you to reclaim your creative, generative energy. And that is the benefit. That's the beauty of the dark night of the soul, is that you're going to have to kind of go through hell a little bit until you get to the point where you can't fight the truth of who you have been being, and then recognize that it's not actually who you are. You're not that person. You're not a weak woman who needs this man to take care of you, or needs this man's love, or needs this man's validation. You realize, I'm a goddess. I'm a conscious creatrix. I have everything that I need within me, and I don't need you. And there's somebody out there that's not going to extract from me. There's somebody out there that's going to pour into me. But the way that I attract that person who's going to pour into me is by pouring into myself. And that's the recognition and the realization that comes from the dark night of the soul experience. And so we're having this on a collective level where people are seeing, like, the governments are failing us. The economic system is collapsing. We can't afford groceries. Gas prices are too high. It's like we don't need these systems. We don't need these systems, but because we have been relying on these systems to be the source of our needs, they don't actually have to take good care of you because you've given them all of your power, which is why they put us through the same song and dance of the election cycle every 4 years. Well, really every 2 years, because you have the midterms, but then you have like the big presidential election and like the governor elections and all of that. So every 2 years, they keep you on this cycle, this song and dance. It's kind of like how the narcissist breadcrumbs. They'll treat you like shit for a really long time, but then when they need something for you, they'll give you a little affection. They might bring you a little gift. They might show you a little bit of attention. They're going to breadcrumb you because they want to make sure that they keep their supply engaged. Because if they don't give you just a little something, then you're going to wake up sooner. You're going to realize that it's a non reciprocal relationship, but it's never a reciprocal relationship. They're just giving you just enough to keep you on the hook. But when you recognize that you don't actually need them to be self sustained, and you can create what it is that you desire on your own, that is what will cause the system to continue to collapse and crumble. But right now, people are still in resistance. Even though people don't like the government, even though they don't like the presidents, and it doesn't matter who's in office, they're not happy, they're not satisfied with their lives. They're still depending upon these systems and structures that they were raised to believe are more powerful than them to get what it is that they need, even though they're not actually getting what they need. And the reason why things are getting worse and worse and worse and worse, it's just like on an individual level or a micro level. Like, think about it. You it's like, I'm gonna always use the example of like men and women, and like, like women being abused in relationships because it's just so pervasive. So you ignore the red flags, right? You see the red flag when you go on the first date. You see a red flag and you're like, whoa, you clock that. But because you're coming from a place of scarcity, because you don't realize that you're fully resourced within yourself, you ignore the red flag, and then another red flag, and then another red flag, and then another red flag. And the next thing you know, this person who you put these rose colored glasses on and thought that they were so perfect and they were going to give you everything that you need, now he is putting his hands on you, he's choking you, he's assaulting you, he's graping you. And it has to get to the point where things get so bad that you finally wake up to the truth that was there all along. The truth of this has been there all along, but people aren't willing to honestly look at what's right in front of their face. So it has to get worse and worse and worse and worse until they finally wake up and say, okay, I'm done. And that is what the collective is going through, is things are going to have to continue to get worse until people finally wake up and say, I'm done. And you're starting to see this. There are people who are riding the wave of the rising consciousness, because the divine feminine is back, honey. She's back and she's shaking shit up. She is shaking shit up. And the people that are waking up, the people that are taking care of themselves, the people that are taking radical responsibility for their lives are reaping the benefits. Not everybody out here is suffering. Not everybody out here is struggling financially. Not everybody out here is lonely or doesn't have community. There are a lot of people out here that have community, that are resourced, that are happy. And it's because they're not following the script that was given to them. They're writing their own story. And so you have people that are building communities, that are buying land, that are learning to grow their own food, that have homesteads, that are forming communities. They're buying cul-de-sacs. They're, putting tiny homes on property and saying, fuck the government. Let's do this ourselves, because we can't depend on them. One major break in the supply chain and millions of people will starve to death. And it might eventually get to that point. It might have to get that dark for the collective to wake up. I don't know if y'all have read Parable of the Sower, and that's something that is people are talking a lot about Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. I read that book years ago. I actually gave that book to my sister Deanna, and that book woke her up. She was like, whoa, because she could see the parallels in society. And Octavia Butler wrote that book in, I think, 1993 or something like that you know and one of the core plot points of that story was the young girl Lauren, who was basically seeing what was happening around her, and all of the adults were asleep. All of the adults around her were in resistance to the truth, and she was trying to get everybody prepared for what she knew was coming, and nobody would listen to her until it was too late. And she ended up having to go on her own journey because she was the only one that was prepared. So if you don't like what's happening in the world, it's time to start preparing. First, starting with yourself and taking care of yourself, doing your shadow work, facing those parts of yourself that you have been neglecting for a really long time, those parts of yourself that you've been ignoring, that you know are not integral, that you know are not a part of your unique design. Really looking at those aspects of yourself. I used to be really angry. angry, combative, I was a shitty listener, overly emotional, just, very like explosive and would like pop off on people. No, I wouldn't really pop off on people, but if we had a conflict and I was triggered, I had no emotional control because I was operating from triggers. I was operating from programs that were installed in me that were pulling me out of my present moment. And I had to really, when I started working with my first teacher, I had to really face some parts of myself that were ugly, ugly. And it was painful. And that ego resisted it so heavily. There would be times when I felt like I was coming out of my skin because the resistance to the truth of who I had been being was so powerful. But I was at a point in my life where I could not take anymore. I could not be in pain anymore. I did not want to have, you know, failed relationships. I didn't want to be in conflict with the love of my life. I didn't want to be fighting with my friends. I didn't want to be, not booking work as an actress. I didn't want, I was just so tired of that suffering. And I had to fully take responsibility for the fact that my suffering was self inflicted. Now, the only people that are blameless, it's not blame, but the only people who don't have the ability to take full responsibility for themselves are children. When you were a child, you were a victim, and what happened to you wasn't your choice. But when you were an adult and you have autonomy and you have some level of sovereignty, there's no excuse. And we live in a beautiful time in the world where we have access to all of the information that we could ever dream of. It's why the millennials and younger are so far ahead of the older generations of the Gen X's and the boomers. And I don't know if there are any silent generation. I think most of the silent generation has passed on. There might be like a small percentage of silent generation still here, but all of the generations above millennials, they didn't have 24/7 access to internet. They didn't even have internet. They didn't have YouTube University where they could sit on a live stream and hear these downloads. They didn't have that, but we do. And so, with us having access to all of the information, to be connected globally, to hear the stories of our brothers and sisters around the world, there's just no excuse for it. But people are going to continue to resist that because they're still in that old consciousness, but that old consciousness is dying. It is the new consciousness, or when people talk about the new earth, that's what they're talking about. It's not like some mystical heaven that you have to die to experience. People are building the new earth right now. And you have like a split in the consciousness where there are people that are on one side that are stuck in the politics and they're stuck in the muck and mire of all the bullshit. And then there are other people that are saying, okay, I see what's happening over there. I see that. I'm aware that all of this is taking place, but that's not what I'm calling in. That's not what I'm calling in. Because that's the other thing is people get upset. They feel like you're dissociating from the things that are happening in the world or that you don't care, that you're apathetic. But it's not that you're apathetic. You can recognize that there is a reality that is in existence because we are multidimensional beings. There are multiple realities that are playing out simultaneously, but that doesn't mean you have to live in that reality. There is some benefit and truth to being Delulu. There's some benefit and truth to that. You get to be a little Delulu. You know what I'm saying? Because again, we are conscious creators, and it is through our minds, our consciousness, our subconscious beliefs that we get to construct the reality that we desire. It's why, excuse me, you can have siblings from one family who all were raised essentially the same, but live vastly different lives. You have one sibling that is like uber successful, and then you have another sibling that might be on drugs or depressed or living in poverty. What's the difference between those two, especially when they were raised in the exact same environment? Obviously, there's some like epigenetic diversity there. There's different things that you're carrying, and you didn't have the exact same experiences. But it goes to show that even though you have two people in the same family with the same blood running through their veins, you can have two very different reality experiences between those people. And so, if you can have that within the same family, you can definitely have that within the collective. And that's what we're seeing play out is where people in the collective who are waking up, who are riding this wave of the rising consciousness, who are integrating those parts of themselves, those shadow aspects of themselves, who are communing with the divine feminine, who are recognizing themselves as the creation of the great mother that comes from the womb of consciousness where all possibility exists. Those are the people that are going to continue to rise and elevate and do well. As on the other side, more and more people are going to fall deeper into despair, deeper into scarcity, deeper into violence. You don't have to live in that reality if you don't want to. I'm aware of things that are going on in the world, but they are not my reality. And people who want you to take responsibility for what they're experiencing are the people that have the hardest time with it. Well, why did you vote for Trump? Well, why did you vote for Biden? Why aren't you boycotting Target and Amazon? Why aren't you doing XYZ? You should be doing this. You're the reason why we're still suffering. You're the reason why all of these systems still exist. Like, no, 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 no. Because what I'm doing is I'm pulling my energy and I'm focusing on a reality that I know is possible because A, I'm already living in it. And I know that it's only going to get better. And you've decided that you're in hell. And you've decided that it's only going to get worse. And that's what you're going to experience. And I don't have to play that game with you if I don't want to. And people aren't going to like it. But fuck them. Let them be in hell. If people want to choose hell, let them choose hell. You do not have to choose hell. It's a choice. Hell is a state of mind. Heaven is a state of mind. And if you're in hell right now, it doesn't mean that you're stuck there. You can ascend to heaven whenever you want. Is it going to take time? Yeah. Is it going to take work? Absolutely. Is it going to be easy? Hell no. But you have the ability to do that if you are able to set your ego down and recognize that you are here for something greater than what you've been taught, what you believe right now, and what you've been programmed to believe. Because a lot of y'all are walking around with belief systems that aren't even yours. A lot of y'all have beliefs that you've never questioned. A lot of you have feelings about yourself that are not your true feelings. It's something that somebody said to you years ago or lifetimes ago that you internalized as truth and have accepted that and are thus living the physical manifestation of that. But you get to decide. I really love Threads. I spend more time on Threads than any other social media platform because it's like just a very high vibrational platform and people are really tapped in. Well, I spend most time on YouTube, but Threads is like the other place I spend a lot of time. But I read a thread, I think it was this morning, where a woman was having a conversation with her mother, and she had just gotten like a really great job offer or something like that. But her mom just kept being like, "Oh, well, are you sure if that's going to work out? And that doesn't seem like it's legitimate." And just basically like pissing in her Cheerios, essentially. And then the woman had an epiphany that all of her self-limiting beliefs that she had carried her entire life didn't actually belong to her. They belonged to her mother. And she had internalized her mother's self-limiting beliefs because it's kind of like what I was saying before, where the millennials and younger were coming from a very different lens from Gen Xers and boomers and the silent generation. Our mothers didn't have the opportunities that we have. Our mothers, it was get married and have babies and that's it. And you might have a job, but it's not going to be your dream job. It's going to be a job that pays the bills. And they weren't given the opportunity to dream of more for themselves. They didn't know that they were conscious creators. They didn't know that they could bend reality to their will. They didn't know that they could literally speak things into existence. And so they pass those limiting beliefs onto us because that's what they've carried for their whole lives and they don't know any better. But because you know better, you get to say, "Hold on, mom, I love you, but I rebuke that. Return to sender. I don't receive that. That does not belong to me. That belongs to you." Or if you have internalized that, understand where it came from and recognize that you can let that go. You can shed that. You can heal that. So I'm starting to feel kind of like I'm feeling a little complete. Like the channel isn't there's not a whole lot more coming through, but I do want to hold space in case anybody has any questions. drop a question in the chat or something that it is that you have to say. But that's really what I wanted to come on here and talk about today because I, I see it all the time and I sit back and I watch it because y'all know I don't post a lot on Instagram. I'm pretty quiet. When I do have something to say, I come out and say it, but I'm always watching. I'm always watching. I'm always observing the collective. I'm always feeling what's happening in the collective. I just posted a couple of days ago of how I've been very emotional lately. I've been crying a lot. And I know that I'm releasing things within myself that I don't need to carry or hold anymore, but I'm processing things for the collective. I'm processing things for my grandmother who died when I was a baby. I'm processing things for my mother. I'm processing things for my sisters. I'm processing things for, women in Congo. Like I just read a story. I'm not going to go into the details of it, but there was something that just happened in Congo a couple of days ago where there were more than 100 women where there was a prison outbreak or a prison break, and hundreds of men went and SA'd over 100 women and then burned them alive. And I had to move that through my body, but I know how to move that through my body. A lot of people will read something like that and they'll internalize it. They'll hold on to it and it'll become calcified in their body as grief, as stagnant energy, which causes sickness and illness and reproductive issues and disease and all types of imbalances within the body. But when you know how to like feel something and then move it through your system, it's a very, very different experience from what a lot of people are going through. Because a lot of people are looking at the state of the world. They're looking at the suffering that others are going through and they're internalizing it and taking it on as their own pain. When it's not your pain to hold, it's simply meant to be moved through you. Transmutation. We are alchemists. We are alchemists. We have the ability to take any energy and transmute it into whatever we want and to heal. Over a year ago, I did a mushroom ceremony, a solo mushroom ceremony, because I knew I just kept getting like my late grandmother, my maternal grandmother's name was Rose. And I was just drawn to roses. There was just so much around roses that just kept coming up for me. And I was like, okay, this must be something with my grandmother. And so I went to my mom and I asked her for a photo of my grandmother. And I don't remember her. I don't even know if I met her because she died when I was a baby. But I just knew that there was something that she needed to release that I had the power to transmute. And so I put her photo up on my altar. I did my mushroom ceremony. I prayed over the medicine. And then when the medicine was working through me, I sat with my grandmother and I asked her, "What do you need to let go of? What do you need to feel? What do you need to say? What do you need to express?" And I let all of it come through me. Y'all, I was literally, because y'all know I live in a school bus. I live in my school bus. I was on the floor, like fetal position on the floor, sobbing. So much intense pain moving through my body, emotional pain, years and years and years of pain. And I did the same thing for my mother. But I needed to have all of this move through me because I came here with this gift of alchemy and transmutation. We all have it. But like I was saying before, I am the generation that has the awareness of it. I'm the one in my family who knows I have this power and I'm tapped into it and I don't reject it. And so I knew that it was my responsibility to heal that aspect of my bloodline so that I don't carry that forward, so that I'm not feeling angry or I'm not using my voice because I'm actually carrying the part of my grandmother who couldn't use her voice or the part of my mother who couldn't use her voice. That's alchemy, that's transmutation. And so we have the power to do that. So if you don't like something that you're seeing in the world, alchemize that shit. I wouldn't recommend doing that just like without having any training or having, you don't necessarily need training, but with a guide that can help facilitate that for you to connect you to that part of yourself so that you can learn how to do that safely and you can let go of what's not yours so that you can integrate and come out of that experience back in the present. I know how to do that. So I can do that. And I teach people how to do that. but you have the ability to do that. So if you're unhappy with suffering that's happening in the world, you can process that pain. You can process that through you. And then you can make changes within yourself in the way that you show up that counteract that violence and suffering that's being put out into the world. So this is what I mean when I say if you don't like what's happening in the world, look in the mirror. And what I mean by that is not you're the blame, it's that we have power. We have power. We are the power. Everything that we see around us is our creation, collectively and individually. And you think that your own individual contribution doesn't count. But I want to tell you about one of my favorite books is called Cloud Atlas. I haven't read it in many years, probably over 10 years, but that book is just don't watch the movie. Don't watch the movie. Read the book. The book is amazing because it really illustrates what it is that I'm talking about today of like the interconnected nature of humans and how we have the ability to traverse through multiple lifetimes and dimensions and how the one thing that you're doing right now has a reverberating impact hundreds, thousands, millions of years from now. And there's a quote in the book that I'm going to have to paraphrase. I don't remember the exact quote, but it's basically it refers to a person who thinks that they're insignificant. They think that they're just a single drop. Hold on. My battery's getting low. So they think that they're just a single drop in the ocean, but the quote is, "What is the ocean but a multitude of individual drops?" And that is and, like, I remember when I read that, I was like I was in my, I think, early 20s when I read that book, and it hit me like a ton of bricks because you look at the ocean as this almost endless expanse of water and force and power, but also a home to countless beings and creatures, and so much that we haven't even discovered yet. I think they said that only, like, what less than 10% of the ocean has actually been, like discovered or explored. But think about that those bodies of water that cover 70% of this planet is comprised of individual drops. Individual millions, billions, trillions, gazillions, whatever the highest number is of drops come together to create this power source that fuels and is essentially the primordial essence of creation. You're a part of that. So don't ever think that if the only contribution that you have to this lifetime to the collective to ending human suffering is to not eat animals anymore, great. If your only contribution is to break the cycle of, you know what, every woman in my family has had to work herself to the bone because I come from a lineage of American chattel slavery. So I'm going to spend my life in my soft girl era. I'm going to rest. I'm going to have an easy life. If that is your contribution, great. Don't ever let anybody tell you that what your contribution is insignificant or not enough, because your contribution is going to have a massive reverberating effect on the collective, whether you think it will or not, and whether anybody else thinks it will or not, because that's how powerful we are. So if you don't like the way that the world looks, if you hate what's happening in the world, look in the mirror, remember who the fuck you are, and do your part to become who you're meant to be, and let go of the programming that tells you that you're insignificant or that you're here to serve the purpose of other people, because that's a lie. And living a lie is why so many people are unhappy. So that's it. That's all I got to say. Oh, hi, Michelle. I can't wait to see you again either. I'm so excited. So yeah, I do. I want to share a little bit about that. Let me see how much percent. Yeah, my battery on my computer is dying fast because I can't plug it in because fucking Apple makes you have all these plug attachments, and I have all these other things plugged in. So yeah, I'm going to be at Spirit Weavers this June. So for the women who are here on this live or who watch this on the replay, Spirit Weavers is an all women's gathering that happens in Southern Oregon every year in June, and it is a life changing experience of just living on land like in this beautiful forest in Southern Oregon with nothing but women and children for 2 weeks if you go to both weekend sessions. And it's just a skill sharing event where women come together and they share their medicine, they share, their wisdom, they share their knowledge, they share their crafts. So you can learn everything from like broom making to how to build a fire, basket weaving, to the spiritual healing arts, which is what I contribute. I teach my class Selfish Bitch. Well, I taught it for the first time last year, and I'm going to be teaching it there again this year. And so, yes, Spirit Weavers is an incredible experience. So, if you are looking for a community, if you're looking for a place to go and heal, to be held by your sisters, I highly recommend going to Spirit Weavers in Southern Oregon. For the gentlemen that are on this call or who listen after this, I don't know specifically of any events that are similar to Spirit Weavers, but I do know that there's a group called Sacred Sons, and you can find them on YouTube, not YouTube, on I'm sure they have YouTube videos, but on Instagram, you can find them. Um, it's basically like a collective of men who get together and they help men sort of do that shadow work and heal those parts of themselves that are unintegrated and like really step into their true embodied masculinity that's integrated with the feminine to make them whole beings. So I've never done anything with them, but I've seen their work and it's beautiful and brilliant. So if you're a man who's looking for some community, or if you're looking for a place to engage in really connected sacred brotherhood, then I would look into Sacred Sons. Oh, Mary, thank you so much. Yes. Yeah, so she just signed up for Selfish Bitch. So I am teaching Selfish Bitch again. It is such a powerful, incredible class. It I don't even really know how. Like, that's one of the things. It's so hard for me to like sell my work because I never know how to talk about it. But it's a really powerful class where I teach you how to embody this archetype of the selfish bitch that gets you out of your people pleasing, out of overgiving. I teach you like who you truly are as a woman, why so many people are seek you out as a resource to be extracted from. I teach you all of these intricacies, and I dive into like the matriarchal wisdom. I talk about the origins of patriarchy. I talk about the dynamics between the sexes and why, I have a bonus section that's called Men and Why They Deserve Less. And when I say men and why they deserve less, I'm talking about like the unembodied man. I'm not talking about the embodied masculine. I'm talking about the distorted masculine. But I teach you all of these things in Selfish Bitch, plus some embodiment exercises so that you can connect to your intuition, you can connect to your inner voice and learn how to shut out the noise of the programming and society and all of the messaging that is designed to keep you disconnected from your feminine essence and your feminine power. And I help you reconnect to that. So I'm going to be teaching Selfish Bitch in March on for two different events. So I'm going to be teaching it live in Houston on March 8th and 9th in Houston, Texas at Happy Hour Pilates. And I'm going to be teaching it virtually on March 16th. So if you're not in Houston or you can't make it, or you want to get the replay, then sign up for the virtual class that'll be happening on March 16th. The links are actually in the description of this video. So when I'm done with this live, or actually, it's my first live, so it might be there. The links might be there already. But if not, once this video is done and it processes, you'll get to see that the links are there. So if you're in Houston or you don't mind making a trip to Houston, I'm teaching it on the 8th and 9th. And so you choose whichever day you want. Teenage girls are free to all of my classes. I love having teens in my Selfish Bitch class. I had a bunch of teens take it at Spirit Weavers and they loved it. And so if you have a teen girl or a couple teen girls that you know of, or it's a niece, a daughter, a goddaughter, god sister, anything like that, just let me know. Teens are welcome to come for free. They're free of charge always. So March 8th and 9th in Houston, Texas, or virtually on March 16th. And I dive more into a lot of the concepts that I talk about here on this live. And I'm also here to just answer any of your questions. I do spiritual alignment sessions, which you can find the link to at the bottom in the description. I also do human design readings. So if you want to learn the blueprint of who you are and how you're designed to operate in this life, because every single one of us has our own unique blueprint, I do human design readings. I also do energy healings. And yeah, I mean, always feel free to check out my offerings, send me DMs on Instagram. I read all of my messages. I don't always get to answer all of my well, I always answer my messages from women. I don't always answer my messages from men because some of y'all just be wanting attention and to flirt, and I'm not interested in that. But if you're talking real shit and you want to like really drop in with men as a male, I'm open to that. But you got to come correct. So yeah. Are there any questions? Oh, my birthday is March 31st. Hey, Aries. Let's see. How do you move it through your system? Is it just my moving through your body through working out, jumping on the trampoline? Well, yeah, movement is a great way to process things through your system. And when I talk about moving things through your system, it's not always conscious. Like you don't always know what it is that you're moving through your system. And one of the things that I teach my clients is to not try to always understand on an intellectual level what it is that they're processing, because everything that you're holding within your body, it's on a multicellular level, and it's not always conscious, it's subconscious. So it might be things that you're carrying from past lineages or from when you were a baby. I have a practice that I do with my clients where I do, I take you through your body's wisdom. And so we can find specific origin points and certain memories that I can help you process. But for me, the best way to move things through your body is through movement and crying and vocalizing. So just speaking, like like just like making noises and like letting whatever vocalizations need to come through you. That's one of the best ways of moving energy through your system, because a lot of us, we have contracted or misaligned throat chakras. That's why a lot of women have thyroid issues. A lot of thyroid issues comes from not using your voice. It comes from not speaking your truth. It comes from not being honest. And so if you have issues with your throat, or if your throat feels constricted, or a lot of women aren't speaking in their natural voice, a lot of women that speak in like vocal fry and like talk like that, they're not talking in their natural voice. You're constricted. You're cut off from your throat chakra, and your expressive pathway is not open and clear, which is why a lot of women don't speak in their natural voice. And so any type of vocalization, I mean, sometimes when I'm really angry, I get in my car and I put on my cruise control. I get on the highway and I turn on heavy metal music. I love Mudvayne. I'll put on like Mudvayne or Tool, and I will just scream and just rage while I'm driving, and cry and just like bang on the steering wheel and just let it out. And so that's something that I like to do. You can also support the energy being moved through your body through like plant medicines and things like that. There's so many avenues that you can go through. And if you want to get specific and you want to start doing that work, then book a spiritual alignment session with me. The link is in my description. And then we can drop in, and I help women work through all types of ailments and experiences, clearing energy, tapping into past lives and past experiences and clearing that from the system, just getting you aligned into the present and back into your body and out of your head. You don't want to be living in your head, and you don't make decisions from your head. Your decisions come from your body. They come from your heart and your gut, your womb space. That's where you're supposed to be making decisions from. But a lot of y'all are making decisions from up here. Let me check my battery. Yeah, I'm glad that was helpful. Okay, y'all. So my battery on my computer is dying very rapidly. I'm at 11%. And so I don't want this chat to cut off abruptly. And I feel complete with what it is that I had to say. But I want to thank y'all so much for being here. I want to thank you for dropping likes on the video. If you didn't like the video, please like the video. Once it's processed, leave a comment, share it with somebody that you think would benefit from it. I'm going to be doing more lives. I'm going to get better at doing lives. This is my first time on YouTube, and YouTube has always kind of like intimidated me a little bit. I don't know what it is about YouTube, but I've been kind of nervous about going live on here. But I did it. I pushed through. I got it done, and I'm so proud of myself. And I'm really, really grateful for y'all being here with me, because it means a lot when y'all show up to listen to what it is that I have to say. because I know sometimes I be saying a lot. I be talking for hours. I'm only doing an hour and a half today, but some of y'all know that I've done 3, 4, 5 hour lives. I did a 6 hour live once. So your presence here means the world to me, truly. And I'm really, really grateful. And anyone who, again, wants to sign up for my Selfish Bitch classes next month, please do. Once more, I'm teaching it live in Houston on March 8th and on March 9th. And I'm teaching it virtually on March 16th. So go ahead and sign up. Space is limited for the Houston classes because it's a small studio, but virtually I can have as hundreds of people in there if need be. And if you have any questions, feel free to DM me on Instagram, leave a comment on this video, or send me an email. My email address is andrea@goddessvibes.com. I love you so much. Thank you for being here. No, I don't still live in Costa Rica. I'm on my bus. I'm in America. I would love to go back to Costa Rica at some point, but I don't want to live there. Um, I lived there briefly and I realized it wasn't the place for me, but I would love to visit and spend more time there. But yeah, right now I'm traveling in my bus in the United States and loving it. So I'll be doing more bus content soon. I'm gonna be filming a tour video for YouTube. And every time you see me, I'll probably be in my bus. So yeah. Thank y'all so much for being here today. I love you. Have a beautiful day. Be blessed. Take care of yourselves. Love yourselves. Know how powerful you are. And don't forget that whatever it is that you're here to do matters. And it is the best contribution that you can give. And don't let anybody guilt you or shame you out of doing what you feel is right for you to contribute to the growth of the collective and the raising of the collective consciousness. I love you guys. Take care.